Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Ninja Knight. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. So today I'm going to do something a little bit different, and I'm going to review the first season of the Umbrella Academy. So the Umbrella Academy has been up on Netflix for quite a time. So I've only gotten around to watching it now due to various people suggesting the show to me. So I think starting off on the first season and first episode is actually quite good. The episode starts out basically in Russia, and it shows that on October 1st, 1989, 43 women give birth to 43 children. Now, despite none of them showing any signs of pregnancy until the labour began, so this is a pretty jarring scene within the opening kind of act within the first episode, and I thought it was done pretty well, and it certainly took me by surprise with this I suppose opening to the first episode. Seven of the children, so seven of the 43 are basically purchased or kind of leveraged by an individual called Sir Reginald Hargreaves, who seems to be in a kind of weird, kooky kind of guy, and he's played nicely by Colin Feore. Now, Colin Feore was a guy who played the Frost Giant in the first Thor movie, and he was also a character, I can't remember the character's name right now, in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. He worked very closely with Harry Osborn and that. So he's a good actor. He's been around and he's been in different things, and I quite like him. There's a couple of actors within this show as well too that are excellent in my opinion, and it really starts off very strongly, and the team are quite likable. And I think one individual really doesn't come off too well, but it's not too surprising when we see that later. So Reginald turns this team into a superhero team, and they're called the Umbrella Academy. So it shows then in the present there's five of the children have now grown up. So we see Luther, and Luther's quite a big guy, and he's living on the moon. We see Diego, who's also known as number two. So Luther is number one, Diego is number two, who's stopping a home invasion. We have Alison, number three, who's walking on a red carpet at a film premiere. So it's very much so and very clear that she's a film star, some sort of type of star, some celebrity in this life. We then see Klaus, who's number four, and he's leaving a rehab, and he's immediately beginning to use drugs, and then he gets into an ambulance, and he's basically brought back to life. So his story, actually, he's one of the characters that I like quite most, and I'll explain why later on. And then we have Vanya, who is number seven, and she's playing the violin. Now she's playing one of the songs from The Phantom of the Opera, which I think is quite an interesting song to play, particularly in the first episode, given the nature of the Phantom of the Opera, that he is a guy that tries to start off doing good and he ends up doing some bad, and obviously he's horribly disfigured. So I think that's got a lot to do with the characters in this, because some of them are disfigured by how they look, but also mentally as well too. Some of them are very disfigured by the upbringing that they've been given. The children then are deciding to reunite in their home to talk about the death of Sir Reginald. So each of them gets a different way of looking at Sir Reginald's death, and they eventually come home. They come back to the house to discuss the death of Sir Reginald. So Luther decides to visit Reginald's bedroom, and he sort of suspects that his father was murdered by one of the others because of his monocle is missing. So the monocle seems to be one of the key points of the season, and it actually starts to play out within the episode itself. So Diego is reassuring Luther that the coroner stated that Sir Reginald died of a heart failure, but Luther remains very suspicious, and Luther kind of finds Diego within the room already, and Luther's very suspicious of Diego, and the dynamic between those two men and those two characters is really good in my opinion, because you have Luther that seems to be kind of a gentle giant, and you have Diego who's very adept at doing what he does, which is he has no problem with being a brutalizing vigilante. We then go on and see a flashback then to the Umbrella Academy's first appearance, and they successfully stop a bank robbery. Now this was a beautiful scene in my opinion, and it was something that was very reminiscent of the X-Men, I thought. So Reginald and Vanya are watching the action from a rooftop, and Vanya asks why she can help. So this is the individual that's played by Ellen Page. Now Ellen Page, for me, within the first episode, is probably the weakest link in terms of the cast. I think the rest of the cast are absolutely outstanding, and I think Ellen Page just doesn't cut the mustard for me. Reginald has no problem telling her point blank that she's not special in the slightest, and he adopted six children. He should have just adopted the six instead of the seven. So that kind of has really big, deep cuts, I suppose, and psychologically as well too for her. It's going to show that those problems are going to start mounting, in my opinion. It comes then back to the present, so they're deciding to kind of have a memorial then for Sir Reginald, and a lightning storm starts to come out from the group outside. They the lightning storm itself, like they start to suspect it's kind of like a black hole or some sort of time warp, and we see an old man's face, and then next of all pops out this boy, and this boy is named number 5, and here he is here. I think this guy is absolutely outstanding as an actor. He comes straight through, and he tells the rest of the team that he's been elsewhere. He's been in a different timeline for a number of years, but that he's transporting his brain back to a younger self. He's a fascinating character, and definitely I think one of the best actors within the show, given he's only a young boy, but he's absolutely incredible. So he's arrived at the academy, and he's explaining to them that he travelled to the future, then he came back and became stuck in his 13-year-old body, and he reveals then that he's a 58-year-old man. And I think that's an incredible kind of idea, that they have a kid with the brain of a 58-year-old man. So he's very adept at telling the other characters what he wants, and this kind of pops up then later on in a coffee shop. So the group then hold a funeral for Reginald, and there seems to be a bit of an argy-bargy then between. There's a bit of an argument between Luther and Diego, so they're butting horns throughout the whole episode, and it finally comes to a crocker down between the two of them. So Pogo, there's a monkey that's able to talk, and he's telling the boys to stop, but the rest of the team seem kind of content with walking away and letting them just carry on what they do. Now, at the moment in time, we get revealed that there's another individual called Ben. He's not pictured here in this picture, but Ben is a young boy, and it's revealed that he's dead. So for us as viewers, it's very interesting to see what happens, because in that bank robbery that I mentioned earlier on, he transforms into this type of monster and literally kills people, and then he comes back out soaked in blood. So his story, his transformation type of idea, is going to be really interesting to see how that pans out. Then we see them another flashback after the boys have settled their score, and basically Diego kind of gets one up on Luther by throwing the knives at him. Diego's power seems to be throwing knives, and he's a very accurate marksman. So it seems to put a big fracture within the group then, and the group split again. We see then a flashback that Reginald is training the children, and then he gives them all a tattoo of an umbrella on their wrists, and then Vanya is in the corner, and she puts the tattoo, well, she draws a tattoo onto herself with a marker to try and be part of the group. So the present in the group then part their ways then with each other. They've kind of had enough of each other at that point. Now Klaus at this time has been rooting through Reginald's drawers to see what he can get. He's an absolute fiend, and I'll talk about him now in in a moment. But he leaves with this box that seems to have some sort of significance later on, and I think what happens later is pretty good. 5 then goes off and visits a coffee shop, and this is a pretty interesting scene when he moves into the coffee shop, and there's a man there, and the man is talking to him, and he's like, "Don't talk to me like I'm a child." And the man is kind of surprised. The child is then asked, well, as he looks as a child, 5 is then asked what he wants. He wants coffee. He's basically going on a search for coffee, and he's sitting there in the coffee shop and wants a coffee. So he's looked at by the waitress as being kind of odd. And then next of all, out of nowhere, this team of like a SWAT team have him tracked, and they arrive in the coffee shop, and all hell breaks loose. Now the powers that he's using, I'm not quite sure what the powers are yet, whether it's a sort of a time travel type power, but he's very reminiscent of Nightcrawler from X-Men. It's kind of like a teleporting power, or either a time power where he seems to be in one place and then he moves to another then due to the time sort of warp type of idea. It's a fascinating idea, and he goes and absolutely wrecks the crew that comes in and basically leaves, and then cuts out then this tracking beacon that's within his arm and tosses it kind of near the drain. So he's a fascinating character, he is. We then see then later that at a river, Diego is revealed to have taken Sir Reginald's monocle, and then he dumps it in the river. So Luther is very suspicious of Diego, and this idea of Diego then having the monocle after it being such a hot topic of contention, he tries to tell Luther that the monocle doesn't matter really throughout the episode, but Luther is very, very hell bent on this monocle, and Diego's like, no, it doesn't. It's no worries. Don't be worrying about it. But clearly, there's something to worry about, because Diego seems to be a character that's very on the darker side of things. We see then that Klaus is sitting in the back of the car, and he's talking to someone else. Now, previously in the episode, we've had Luther tell Klaus to talk to Reginald and ask him what happened. He wants to know what happened, and Klaus then says, I need to be sobered up so that I can speak to the dead, and they kind of leave him at it. So that part of the episode kind of pans off and they don't really bother Klaus too much again. Now Klaus is shown to be a guy that's an absolute weasel of an individual because he'll steal anything from anyone and then he'll just try to get himself, I suppose, on a high. So we see then later in the episode that the individual he's speaking to in the back of the car actually turns out to be Ben, and then there's a nice title card underneath it that says Ben and that he's deceased. And Klaus has kind of asked them what they think should do. So Ben is number 6, and then the episode is ending then with Five visiting Vanya, and he tells her that in 8 days the human race will come to an end, but he doesn't know why or how. So it sets up a nice, interesting season, in my opinion. Now, it's for me, Five going to Vanya seems to be a bit of an odd decision, given the other characters seem to be far more useful to him than her. So maybe Five knows something more about Vanya, or that she has some sort of secret superpower that we don't know about. So it seems that Luther is a strong man, so he seems to be incredibly strong. So kind of think of like your Colossus type of individual. That seems to be what he's like. Klaus is able to speak to the dead, and I think he's a fascinating character, even the way he behaves. And it's no surprise to see Robert Sheehan acting that well. Robert Sheehan is an Irish actor, and he also acts in a show called Love/Hate, or Love Hate as we call it here. And he's absolutely phenomenal in that. It's a phenomenal show, and I'd always recommend people to check it out to see what they think. But he's phenomenal as Klaus, and Klaus is a very odd individual. Like, he's wearing a dress and all at one point, and he's just very flamboyant, and he's a very interesting character. And I think going on, this fact that he can speak with the dead is going to be a very good mental thing for Klaus, because it shows, in my opinion, even in this one episode, it shows why Klaus is very mentally disturbed and constantly seeking a fix, because he doesn't want to hear the voices, he doesn't want to know, he's trying to get away from it. And I think that's something that's very, very, I suppose, relatable with that character, that he just doesn't want to know, he wants to get away from it. Alison here, which is number 3, she's a fascinating character, and I love the fact that her power seems to be rumour making. Her rumour making power is really interesting, and that could have a big implication then later on throughout the season, in my opinion. She is a fascinating character, and she's very well acted, I think. And she is it seems like she's a bit of a love interest for Luther as well, which is kind of a weird dynamic, considering they're all supposed to be kind of brothers and sisters in a way. So it's a weird dynamic between the two of them, but there's clearly something going on there. She's an individual that has an estranged husband and a child that their custody was taken off her. So it's another kind of thread that I'd love to unravel, and I hope it unravels then later in the season. She's a very interesting character. This guy here, as far as I know, I think his name is Aidan Gallagher. He's phenomenal as Five. He really puts it forward that this guy is a 58-year-old living in a 13-year-old's body. He's totally ahead of the game. He talks down to the other characters as well too, as if they're morons. And there's a real sense then he's very well acted that when he does time jump back, that there is a sense of grave danger, and that he really wants to know what happened and how it happened. So he's going to be a pick for me now for this season. I absolutely love Diego, and I think Diego is a fascinating character, and again, he's absolutely wonderfully acted. I love his skill set as well too, that he can basically throw knives around corners and into different areas, and he's basically a top marksman, kind of like Bullseye. This guy, I think, is really well acted, and there's definitely an edge to him. Excuse the pun with the knives and that, but there's definitely an edge to him insofar as this guy is very unstable. He seems very unstable mentally. Like in one moment he's quite passionate and he's very loving towards the other members, and then the next then he's very cold to them. He doesn't want to know, and he's very as is, or then he's very emotional. He can get very emotional. There's another dance scene as well. There's a weird dance scene in the episode, and it shows each of the characters, and it's absolutely lovely. The shot it's taken for it, that you see all the characters doing their own dance pieces, and it's kind of odd. Ellen Page for me in this episode just didn't hit the high points that I thought she was going to. She's probably the most recognisable actress, I suppose, within the bunch. Obviously, Robert Sheehan's very recognisable to me, but the others, not too much. Tom Hopper here now is really good. And to be honest, I think with the way he looks and the way he acts, he wouldn't make a bad Sabretooth in the MCU. I think he'd be quite good. Given the fact that he starts off with this long mange of hair as well too early in the episode after being living on the moon, so I think he could be a nice pick for Sabretooth in the MCU. But yeah, I'm curious to see what happens with Vanya. She seems the individual that's the least interesting, but I feel that she's going to play a big part given that 5 is really interested to see what happens with her. So yeah, that's the first episode. The first episode, I think, it throws up a lot of questions. There's definitely a sense of, you can see other sort of influences for this. There's a big influence from Watchmen, I think, within this, and it's definitely shown because with the death of a character like Sir Reginald and the family come back together is very akin to the comedian dying, and then the Watchmen kind of getting back together and trying to figure out who did it, or was there sort of foul play involved. So there is that kind of element within it. There's also an X-Men type of vibe, with the fact that the team were gathered together at a young age by a weird individual, and then he trains them then to use their powers to the advantage and to vigilantism. So that's kind of an interesting look at it as well too. It seems to be drawing from a number of different sources, in my opinion, but it makes for a very interesting show. Everybody's so well acted within the show, and I think that this is going to be a nice one to watch for the remainder of the season. Anyway, that's my review of episode 1. I think it's definitely an interesting show that I'm going to watch and I'm going to see more of, because the characters within the first episode had me hooked. And like I said, one individual that didn't have me hooked was Ellen Page, and I don't know whether it's the actor or whether it's the character itself. The character is very bland and just not interesting, whereas the other characters have an edge to them. They have this nice, I suppose, duality going on between them. They have this front that they seem to be all putting up for the others, and then inside, then they're very broken, dark individuals. So I'd like to see how this goes going forward. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Make sure you like the video, make sure you share the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a comment below. I always like to see those, and I'll talk to you later. Good luck.